It's really a two-part system. So it involves sort of yoking the dollar in a de facto way to Bitcoin, and then basically boosting the price of Bitcoin through the roof, essentially, as a way to sort of allow the US government to debt pardon itself.
Bitcoin is up 10% in the past 7 days, as it's currently trading for $101,000 at the time of writing. While the crypto world is in euphoria, with many believing that this is just the beginning of an unprecedented historic bull run for crypto, investigative journalist Whitney Webb is warning us not to turn a blind eye to what's really happening. In an interview on the Jimmy Dore Show, Whitney Webb discussed a wide range of topics, with two of the most eye-opening topics being how Bitcoin's extreme price rise is all a ploy for how the US government plans to settle its debts that cannot otherwise be repaid, and how eventually the plan is to transition into a cashless, surveillance society with social credit scores, and how both are happening right in front of our eyes. Whitney warns us that the billionaire, so-called libertarian class, might appear to be looking out for our best interest, but behind closed doors, they are in bed with the highest of government officials. Whitney believes the PayPal mafia, which is all over the new administration, has extreme conflicts of interest between their investment interest and the policies they are supposedly supporting. In Whitney's view, it's all an act. Let's listen to what Whitney has to say.
But basically, we've had so many wealth transfers in this country. We're at the point where the robber barons, the elite bankers, whatever you want to call them, have basically stolen everything. So now that they have everything, they want to move to deflationary money. And so the only problem they have left the only hurdle left to cross, right, is sort of this extreme US government debt crisis that is about to be upon the United States and essentially been admitted by big time congressmen like Paul Ryan very recently. And one of the ways Paul Ryan pitched getting out of that problem was starting to regulate dollar stablecoins, many of which have now surpassed several nation states as the biggest holders of US treasuries or, US government debt in the world, right? So you have like the biggest dollar stablecoin like Tether now holding, more treasuries than, well, I forget exactly where it is in the ranking, but it's bigger than Germany and some other countries that have significant amounts of reserves. Unfortunately, I don't have the figures at the top of my head right now, but it's a very easy search to find those exact numbers, but it's very significant and being talked about pretty widely. So stablecoins are becoming a way for the US government to service its debt. And this is sort of being done throughout Latin America, especially where you have sort of this de facto, what I would call sort of covert dollarization happening. So like you wreck an economy like Argentina via the IMF, for example, which the US military and documents published by WikiLeaks several years ago was referred to as a financial weapon of US empire, right? So if you like wreck an economy and you destroy their currency, and then people flock to Tether or USDC or some other because they can't get their hand on physical dollars. They can get their hand on virtual dollars. And that's happening in a big way in a lot of these economies that have become increasingly destabilized, arguably on purpose, by the US power structure. And then you have them becoming de facto dollarized as opposed to sort of formal dollarization, which took place decades ago in places like Ecuador, El Salvador, where those countries essentially lose a significant amount of their financial sovereignty because they're sort of at the whim of the Federal Reserve, which they have zero control over.
Whitney detailed how the stablecoin will play a vital role in the upcoming economic landscape. But what Whitney discusses next is very concerning. It appears that the social platform X is making huge moves in 2025, all of which, according to Whitney, are dystopian in nature. The first concern is X's attempt to implement a social credit score, in which they give recommendations on how to improve your social credit score. Webb believes that even though X owner Musk suggests that he despises WeChat, ironically, he's creating the American version of WeChat. Webb believes that along with the social credit score, X is planning to become a bank of sorts. While Elon appears to be libertarian, Webb believes his actions and associations suggest he's more in line with the dystopian 1984 surveillance society. Let's listen to what Whitney has to say.
Yeah, it was created to be that, but I think they're expanding now, and now they also want social media platforms, the legacy ones, the conventional ones, X, Twitter included, to basically merge with banking. And I
Right.
think that is ultimately the goal. So, because ultimately they want to move to a cashless, completely surveillable society. This has been outlined by a lot of people, including the head of the BIS, for example. And it's obviously been a major focus of U.S. intelligence for decades and decades and decades. Definitely not something new there. And obviously, with the PayPal mafia in particular, looking at people like Peter Thiel, he and his other co-founders at Palantir, sought to privatize a program that was at DARPA at the time, which is part of the military, and was being shut down because of how it was basically eliminating the constitutional right for privacy for all Americans. And he reprivatized that and created Palantir explicitly. That's exactly what happened. There's really no doubt about it if you look at the evidence. And this was something dreamed up right after 9/11 by the neocons. So really, I would argue that those guys, they're rebranded neocons, and the goal of the neocons and that particular, the people that did Iran Contra, it's the same people. The guy that was running this particular program at DARPA was the highest ranking member of the Reagan administration to be arrested as part of and indicted as part of Iran Contra, John Poindexter, who is also considered the godfather of modern surveillance. What do you know? But a lot of those guys, and a lot of the terrible stuff they did abroad, starting with things like, the Phoenix program, Operation Condor, and all of that, sort of these efforts to clamp down on dissidents and authoritarian regimes. A lot of it used computers, used databases, and used building profiles on people. And this particular group in Iran Contra, Poindexter included, were involved with developing this system called MainCore, which has never really gone away. It was seen in use after 9/11 at the White House by people. And as of 2008, which is the last time any sort of mainstream organization reported on it, it had 3 million Americans on it. So essentially, Palantir is the tool used by U.S. intelligence to determine if you end up on that list or not. And and basically, these continuity of government protocols, of which this is part, can decide if you have your constitutional rights suspended if a vaguely defined national emergency is declared at some point. And in the Reagan era, some of these national emergency scenarios included mass nonviolent protests, really, against U.S. military intervention abroad. So a very large anti-war protest, for example. But, lucky for the U.S. government, those don't really happen anymore, I guess. This particular group, talking about Thiel in particular, but he and Musk maintain close ties, and Musk is building, the satellite system for the intelligence community. This gets left out a lot of the time, and is the main contractor for the Pentagon Space Force and also other aspects of the Pentagon. And most of the satellites in the sky are really under his control. His cars, the electric vehicles, whether it's a regular Tesla or a Cybertruck, are basically surveillance vehicles. This has sort of come out in the wake of a lot of this information about the Cybertruck bomber thing at the Trump hotel or whatever, where he was saying, well, it couldn't have been on autopilot because you have to be filmed and surveilled by this camera, and it has to detect an attentive driver for you to put anything in autopilot. Basically, it's very ironic that people sort of see him as an anti-establishment figure. But again, it's because I think Americans are very easily hypnotized by rhetoric, and they ignore policy action or what people actually do. And they get so swept up in the image, often false image, that's projected out publicly, whether on social media or other forms of mass media, and sort of fall for that facade that's constructed. And when you're the richest person in the world, you can hire a lot of help to make you the best facade possible.
SIM swap fraud is sweeping the globe, and your mobile security is at risk. Switch to Ifani and lock out SIM swap fraud and get the most elite mobile protection in the world. Ifani guarantees 100% protection from SIM swaps, backed by a $5 million insurance policy. Stay secure with reliable coverage, free international roaming, and unlimited data. Trust Ifani to keep your communications and assets secure. Get military-grade protection, 24/7 concierge service, and a hassle-free upgrade. Click the link below for $150 off. Thanks for watching. Help support this channel and receive exclusive offers from one of our partners located in the description. We'll see you on the next one.